welcome back to another episode of the One Tree Hill Rewatch here on the Filmaholic channel. I'm Matthew, and today we're going to be talking about a few episodes in Season 5 of One Tree Hill. The first episode is called I Forgot to Remember to Forget. It's 505, originally aired January 29th, 2008, was directed by Liz Friedlander. This is her first episode. She directs several throughout the course of the next few seasons, including through Season 7, and it was written by Terrence Colley, who writes a lot of episodes in the show, if you've been watching these episodes. Like I said, this is one of my favorite episodes. It's mostly based in the past, 3 years before where we are in the timeline right now. The show. Right now, where we are on the show is about 4 years after Season 4. 4 years and some change, so it would be technically 2010 because they graduated in 2006. So this episode would be mostly based in 2007. The characters would be about 18, 19, depending on how old they were in Season 4. So in general, 19. But it cuts to the past with Lucas after he looks at a photo of the championship that he won in college. He was an assistant coach, obviously. Nathan was playing on the team, and Whitey was the head coach. So it cuts back to that game, and we see them win the championship. We see actually a little bit before that of them getting ready for the championship, and Whitey coming back to the show. Obviously, he hasn't been in the past 4 episodes, actually the past 5 episodes, because he wasn't in the season finale of Season 4 either. But so it's been a little bit since we've seen Whitey, so it was nice to revisit that character. This is Whitey's only episode in Season 5, and he actually only has one more episode after this, and that's in the Season 6 finale, which is my favorite use of Whitey in the show, period. But he's really good in this episode, too, even though he's not in the whole episode. He's just in that beginning when they're playing the game and right before. But his scenes are pivotal. Like, they're important to the episode and the season, honestly, just like they always use Whitey, I guess. And you know, he talks to Lucas in this episode. Well, actually, let me go back. They end up winning the game, but right before they win, Whitey walks off the court, and he lets Lucas call the final shots, which ends up winning the game. So Whitey then tells Lucas after the game that, you know, this is his final game. He actually is retiring this time. Remember, Whitey was going to retire after Season 4. When he was done coaching the Ravens. Like, he was done, he was ready to retire. The only reason he really took this college job was to help out Nathan. So he did that for a year, got Nathan out of the place that he was in, got him playing college ball, but also helped Lucas out. And now he tells Lucas, you know, he talked to the staff at the school and everything, and they've never had a head coach before, but they've never won a state championship either. I feel like this is a little unbelievable, but I don't know. I'm not that big into sports, so I don't really know if this has ever happened in history. But anyways, after this year, Lucas will become the head coach of the Cobras, which is interesting to think about. That I would assume that he was the head coach of the Cobras the next 3 years after this, up until he left to come back to Tree Hill to coach the Ravens. That's what I would assume, because it's never really mentioned. It sets that up that he's going to coach, so I definitely feel like he coached the next year, but it never really tells how long he did coach at that college. And I know, for the course of the show and for the purpose of the show, you had to bring him back to Tree Hill, but why would you leave a college to come coach a high school team? It's going to be a lot less money. But yeah, that's interesting too, because if that was the case, he hasn't actually been living in Tree Hill that long when Season 5 starts, since the end of Season 4. But then he was also working on his book that year, which we'll get into in a second, after this. So, which his book, I would say, actually came out in 2008, which would be 2 years after they graduated, because this episode, like I said, takes place 1 year after they graduated. And then I think they spend the next year after that him preparing his book, and then it actually gets released to the public. So yeah, we see that. We see the past. We see Whitey telling him he's going to be the new coach, all this. And then we see Nathan's temper. Once he's won the game, he's happy and everything, but then somebody heckles him outside about him point shaving and how his son might grow up to be a point shaver too. And Nathan, grabs the guy and gets upset. And then there's a nice scene between him and Whitey where, Whitey's upset about that. He's like, you can't be getting so upset over every little thing like this, even if the guy's a jackass. But this is your career. I put my retirement on hold for you. You need to start taking this more seriously and not letting people get to you. Um, which I don't know how much that conversation actually helped. And I'm not like saying Nathan wasn't in the right to do the things that he did, because he was definitely standing up for Haley and whatnot in the future episodes. I think I would have done the same thing. But, we see what ends up happening to him. He puts him in the wheelchair, so he didn't really follow Whitey's advice all that much. So, but anyways, that happens. We also see that Lucas and Nathan and Haley were all living together with Jamie during this time period. They shared a house. One thing I think is a little bit unclear is how long Nathan and Haley went to school with Lucas. We know they went there for, I think, 2 years at least, this year and the next year. We also don't know if they won another championship after this. Nathan makes a comment at the end of the episode when he's looking over the trophies that this was the first Cobra championship. He says first, so I'd assume they actually won 2 championships. So the year after that with Lucas, I'm assuming they probably won a championship as well. But we don't know. And I think it's mentioned that, and I want to say University of Maryland, but I'm not positive. I think they mentioned that in one of the first episodes of this season. So I think that Nathan probably went to, I think it's Gilmore College, which is where the Cobras is. I think he probably went there for 2 years and then transferred to University of Maryland, and then played for 2 years before obviously graduating, and then the accident happened before he was going to go to the Supersonics in Seattle. So anyways, that happens, but then we get to the main portion of this episode, which is about Lucas and Peyton, but mainly Lucas. He sees how happy Nathan and Haley are, and they have the Jamie and everything, and he thinks back to the high school with Peyton, and he hasn't seen Peyton but 3 times over the past year, which is interesting, and we don't know what those times are. I would assume one would be Christmas, and don't know about the other 2, but I would assume that probably Peyton came back to Tree Hill once, maybe that time, and the other times he went to LA to see Peyton, but it's never made clear, and it doesn't really matter. But he ends up going to LA to see Peyton, surprises her there. We see Peyton where she was in LA at this point, and what was going on with her in the mailroom and all this different stuff, and how she has to cut short their dinner because she has to go back to work and all this. And really, I mean, that's her trying to make it in LA, and I feel like Lucas should have been more understanding in that, but also he does, offer to move to LA for her, but then she says no because, you have all these Nathan and Whitey and everything's counting on you to coach this team. And but anyways, I really like all that stuff. It's good. It's real. We do see a scene. He gets a room for them at the Beverly Hilton in LA, which I've never been to, but I've been by it. The room in this episode definitely doesn't feel like it would be at the Beverly Hilton. And there's a picture of corn stalks on the wall. I'd be very upset if I paid that money to be at the Beverly Hilton and then that was on the wall. But anyways, so they have the room there. Peyton walks in while Lucas is asleep and finds the ring that he has, which was the ring that Keith gave to Karen. We find that out a little bit later too. But she finds it and finds out that he was going to propose to her, and he starts to propose, but then she shuts him down and is like, we're only 19. We have so much ahead of us. There's so much we need to talk about. Look where we are in our lives. How is this going to work right now? But she doesn't want to break up. She wants the relationship to continue. But, as he says, look how far we've grown apart over the past year. We've only seen each other 3 times. And they go back and forth, but ultimately what Lucas says is, I'm afraid this is going to end with goodbye, in which it does. He leaves the next morning while she's still asleep and goes to the airport, which is definitely the Wilmington Airport. It's supposed to be LAX, but definitely not LAX. Anyways, he's there. He's trying to get a flight back to Tree Hill, but then he gets a call from Lindsay. This is her introduction to Lucas, even though this is not the first time we've seen her, that she wants to publish his book. So he has to get a flight to New York now. He goes to New York, meets Lindsay, meets this other guy who I'm assuming that's not supposed to be her dad. It doesn't really feel like it, but she does say that her dad owns the company. I'm assuming this is just another guy that's higher up at the company. And he's talking about how, once they found out Dan was a convicted murderer, and that was Lucas's father, they definitely wanted to publish a book because that's the kind of hook to the audience they need. And he also talks about changing Lucas's title, which they don't end up doing, but which is interesting because later in the show, when they're trying to make the movie and then later the series, they cut the unkindness part out and it just cut it to Ravens, which, interesting fact, was originally, I believe, the title for One Tree Hill back when Mark wrote it as a film. Because originally Mark wrote One Tree Hill as a movie. He wanted to do it as a movie and he wanted it to be called Ravens. So I don't know, it would just be like the beginning of the show, essentially. Probably the pilot just extended and it would be called Ravens, and that was what One Tree Hill was. And then the producers got a hold of it and was like, hey, this would be better as a series, and let's change the title, which definitely worked better as One Tree Hill for the title than Ravens, which is interesting. It's always hard to find a title for whatever you're writing, I feel like. But yeah, I think they did a good job with the One Tree Hill, even though a lot of people probably find it confusing of why it's called One Tree Hill, but it's explained in the season 1 finale. Which that's brought up again in the series finale, which we'll talk about when we get there. So yeah, that all this happens. Lucas ends up going to New York, like I said, meets Lindsay. She's going to publish his book. She says it's going to take a year. She asked him about Lucas and Peyton. He says that didn't end up working out. She's upset about it. And then we are reintroduced to Brooke in this time period and seeing where she is. Lucas told her that he's in New York, so they spend the night together and get to see that Lucas and Brooke friendship, which was nice, and then her filling in the gaps of where she was at that point in the timeline, which her and Victoria are living in New York. They moved out there more recently from LA, and her dad is off doing whatever, and Close Over Bros is a thing, but it's not a big thing yet. Victoria still she wants to do all the things that's going to push Close Over Bros bigger, which includes the magazine, the high-end line, all of that, which Brooke agrees to at the end of the episode. And then, obviously, you have the scene, too, with Lucas kind of tries to hook up with Brooke. He's drunk, and it upsets Brooke, I feel like, because of their past and her thinking about everything and just, like, what's important to her, and she ends up agreeing to do the line and everything that Victoria wants to do at that point, and that's still 3 years between then and where we are now in the show. So how much that's built up of her not really being happy and wanting to have like a sort of family that she has never had. So we have all that happens in this episode. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then at the end of the episode, but I just really like it because I liked going back to that time. I liked the emotion of the episode, the use of music, and just like filling in those gaps that we don't know, because I like to see where I like these flashbacks. It's also, I want to point out too, as well, actually, hold on, yeah. I want to point out Julian. Julian's not in this episode, obviously. We don't meet him until season 6, but Julian would have been in this timeline. When we go back and we're introduced and we have flashbacks of Julian and his relationship with Peyton and everything that we get to, because we know they have a relationship too in between season 4 and 5, which felt a little bit forced in given Peyton and how she is in the season, but I'm fine with it because we get Julian. But he would have met Peyton the first time after the scene in season 5 or in this episode that we get with her being upset after her and Lucas break up. That's her first interaction with Julian, and then obviously their second interaction before they actually start dating is when she comes to the book signing to see Lucas and ends up seeing Lindsay kiss him. So all that happens. Lucas also brings Lindsay the lucky bamboo, which she, of course, gave everyone in the main timeline here of the season, so we know where she got that idea from. And the episode ends back in present day with Lucas going to talk to Peyton and her not being there, but Brooke catching on that he is still in love with Peyton. We don't ever really know what he was coming to tell Peyton then, but I guess it's not that important because of what happens in the following episodes. It's probably just something to do with that. But that's how the episode ends. 505, really great episode. And then we get into the next episode, which is 506, Don't Dream It's Over. And this episode originally aired February 5th, 2008, was directed by Thomas J. Wright and written by Mark Schwann. And I believe this is also the episode that introduces Owen to the show, which is a pretty it's a good-sized character this season, and he comes back, of course, in Season 6 and in Season 7 for a small role. Lots of dreams in this episode. The title is definitely appropriate. Starts off with Jamie having a dream about Dan, which is interesting because Dan wouldn't look like that in Jamie's dream, because that's definitely not how he looked in the photo, and he wouldn't know how Dan sounded, but whatever. That's just the purpose, for the scene and everything, and I liked it. Jamie has this nightmare because Skills has told him that Dan actually is in prison, that he's not dead. So Jamie has the nightmare. Dan's like a vampire or whatever, and that leads into this episode of Skills, the fact that he told Jamie the truth about the prison thing, and Jamie thinks it's because Dan didn't clean his room. And then we have like a lot of little moments in that episode, which that ends up coming back in Season 6 with Jamie asking Dan, can you really go to prison for not cleaning your room? Which I like. And I like Jamie and Skills' relationship in the show too, by the way. That's built in this season a lot, and I like that. We also have Brooke having a dream about Victoria in this episode, where she tells Victoria she loves her, and Victoria responds in a good way, which would be a good dream, actually. I think that's the only good dream that's in this episode. Obviously, though, in reality, it is bad, so it's the opposite. And then Haley has a dream. She's jealous of Nat and Carrie in this episode, which is understandable. It makes sense because Carrie is a bad person. She's a bad character, and that's been created over the past. They're setting that up, and I think this episode is also where we have the dinner as well. Yeah, we have the dinner in this episode with Lucas, Lindsay, Nathan, Haley, and Carrie, and that's weird, kind of. Carrie says some weird things to Lindsay this episode. Haley continuing trying to get Q on the team in this episode. He ends up agreeing to do it because Nathan talks to him about racing him off the scoreboards and everything, and Quentin's like, I'm going to do that, so he ends up taking Haley's deal to read Les Mis over the course of the next year and do book reports on it. He agrees to do that. But like I said, Haley's jealous of Carrie. She sees her in the pool and tells her, like, hey, can you not wear a bikini around Jamie? It's inappropriate, which I don't know. That doesn't really make sense. Do you not take Jamie to the beach? But anyway, she asks her to do that because really she just is uncomfortable with Carrie and Nathan being around each other. And she has that nightmare of Nathan and Carrie making out, which was just uncomfortable to watch. It's really uncomfortable to watch Nathan kiss anyone else in the show other than Haley. It's just doesn't seem right. Because of how their characters have been together since Season 1. So it's weird. So that night happens. Lucas also has a nightmare where he proposes to Lindsay, and Peyton's there and tells Lindsay not to. But obviously there's a lot with Lucas and Peyton in this episode as well. Peyton accidentally tells Lindsay that she doesn't like her. Victoria, we'll go back. Victoria's actually, she comes to see because Brooke is paying for this recording studio time. So Victoria comes to check in on Nat and has Mia play in front of her, and then obviously Victoria doesn't like it. Mia gets scared and runs off. Peyton comes in, is talking to Haley about the situation. Lindsay's there. She's stressed out enough with everything going on. She tells Lindsay, hey, can you give us a minute? Lindsay steps outside, and her and Haley have an argument about Lindsay, but the mic is left on, so Lindsay hears everything and the fact that Peyton doesn't like her. So this causes a bigger rift between them throughout the next few episodes, and of course Lucas too, because he gets, he's a big part of all of this. And then Lucas and Peyton have an argument about it later in the episode, where he comes to see Peyton at Trick. And there's a really good scene, back to Hillary Burton's acting, how good it is in the show. Definitely one of the, just her and Paul Johansson give the best performances on the show, I think. Incredible. And they're also my two favorite characters. So, and Julian, but we'll get there. So they have that scene, though, where they argue, and she throws the books at him and everything. It's just a really good moment. And Lindsay also sees their two cars at Trick together, which will play into the next episode of her being jealous even more over Peyton. And then we also have Peyton and Victoria arguing in this season as well, or this episode as well. it's been coming. She's wanting to tell Victoria off, and then Victoria comes in and pretty much she does call Brooke stupid at Close Over Bros, and then Peyton follows her outside, and they have an argument outside of Close Over Bros, which is also really good and goes back to Hillary Burton's acting and her going back and forth with Daphne in that scene. And then obviously the episode does end too with Carrie swimming naked in the pool and Nathan seeing it, which is going to play into the next episode as well, and of course the next few episodes that follow after that. But that's my little thoughts and summaries of 505 and 506 of One Tree Hill. Next episode we'll be talking about a few more, including 507 in the club. So yes, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and I will see you guys next time.